Okay, you may not be finished, but let's wrap up the discussion for a moment. Um, in the time remaining to us in class, I'd like to discuss your results, talk about any confusion you had, correct you if your analysis seems to be flawed in some way. And while I do this, I'd like you all to be working on your story analysis sheets. So filling in blanks that maybe you hadn't filled in already, correcting things that you think are wrong, or possibly even saying, oh yeah, that's exactly what I had written down, that's right, highlight it and you're good to go. Remember that tomorrow during class, you will be required to write on at least one of these concepts. So make sure that you have the notes and the understanding ready to do that writing. I'd like to just pull up some of your sheets and kind of randomly and see what's doing. But actually, rather than just randomly pulling them up at first, I'll take a volunteer. Is there anybody who wants their sheet pulled up to take a look at the ideas? Lauren? All right. Oh, oops, you made a copy. I don't have access directly to the copies. Can you share it with me? Okay, we'll do it that way. aclarkson@bex.net, please. Should take just a moment. Thank you. All right. Here we go. Lauren, start me off. Which one do you want some help with? What would you like to focus on first? Environmental conflict. All right. You're saying that the protagonist is Charlie. Of course, that seems pretty correct. And then your goal is to become smart and to live. And your environmental factor is the death after the experiment. Yes, I can see this. I'd like to clarify because it seems as if you have two goals rather than just one, which means you might have two environmental factors. This might actually be two sort of related environmental conflicts. But let's talk about it for a moment. And as I talk, please make sure that you're taking whatever notes are appropriate for you in this space. Lauren's first goal, identified with Charlie, is for him to become intelligent. If he's trying to become intelligent, what force of nature or factor of just the world is interfering with that goal? What's stopping him from being intelligent? Michael? Yeah, his own mental disabilities. So there's some factor of his brain and his development that is preventing him from achieving his goal. So Lauren, what you might say, let's fix it this way. On protagonist goal right there, why don't you just eliminate the and live and say we're going to become smart? He wants to become smart. I'm sorry? Huh. Yeah, that's strange. Maybe there's usually never any lag on that. Strange. Okay, well, we'll continue. So see if you can see my changes if I change it. Are you seeing me in there? Weird, because I see you on there. That's what the other viewer thing is. See, because I can even say hello. See, that popped up, right? Yeah. So you and I are connected in some way. But, all right. Well, okay. We got it. Okay. So he wants to become smart. The environmental factor that is preventing him is what we might consider not necessarily his mental illness, because I think we want to characterize that differently, but we could talk about mental challenges or mental disabilities or mental handicaps. Now, this teaches us something about environmental conflict. If you are in conflict with some aspect of your body, then you're not in conflict with another person. You're not in conflict with society's rules. And technically, you're not in conflict with yourself, because being in conflict with yourself means that you're in conflict with two different goals. You have two different parts of your personality, two different desires. But if he's in conflict with a mental disability, he's in conflict with some factor of his genetics, some factors of his anatomy, and that makes it an environmental conflict. Okay? So that's one. And then, Lauren, the second goal, and if you could write, if you wanted to, about two environmental conflicts that he faces, both of them kind of physiological, centered on his body. The second conflict is concerning his goal to live. He wants to live. And he wishes to do that in spite of the effects of the experiment. So the effects of the experiment on his brain, the deterioration of his actual physical brain leading to death that we saw in Algernon the mouse, that's what's impeding him from living. So you see that? You have two environmental conflicts, two goals, two separate impediments or challenges to those goals. It's both environmental. And I'm sorry that this is not...
I think it is now.
Oh, there we go. Maybe there's just some sort of lag. That's strange. It should be totally in real. But that's fine. Good. So, Lauren, there you go with that. Next. Who else would like to volunteer one? Or shall I draft? Okay, I will draft then. Colby, I'd like you to share with me. Miranda, I'd like you to share with me. Will, I'd like you to share with me. And Calden, I'd like you to share with me, please. Oh, and Matthew already did. So Matthew, since you did, we'll pull yours up. Matthew, which one would you like to talk about? No? Is there one that you're super sure about, you know you've got right, and you want to make sure that you do have it right?
Yeah, the internal conflict.
Excellent. Internal conflict, Charlie Gordon. His protagonist side is his desire to learn, to become smarter. His antagonist side is being clueless to people bullying him. So explain what you mean to me by the antagonist side.
Like he doesn't realize that people are picking on him, and he thinks that they're just his friends. Like he's being like nice about it in a way, which he doesn't understand.
So is it possible that sometimes people, including Charlie, accept bullying behavior because they're so interested in being accepted? Like he wants to be friends with these guys. He wants to have fun at work, so he doesn't mind that they make fun of him. All right, his antagonist side, this is an example of his antagonist side. So if you want evidence in your writing, that would be good. But his antagonist side is his need to be accepted. Does that make sense? So why don't you make that change? Charlie has a need to be accepted. He wants people to accept him, and he's kind of willing to do anything. What would be the protagonist side of that? Why does Charlie want to be able to read and write? Colby? So he wants to have some amount of self-respect, right? Yeah. He wants to be treated just like everybody else is treated. So I think Matthew, the protagonist side, is kind of where Colby's going here, his need for self-respect. I don't know if any of you recall, at one moment when he's being made fun of and they're actually getting him drunk by slipping liquor into his Coke, at the end of that night, he says, "I felt ashamed." And that shows this conflict. So if you want evidence for that, it's that moment where he says, "I felt ashamed." And we see that there's a conflict between his need for self-respect, to be a person that deserves respect and care, and his need to be accepted. And to me, that sounds like a conflict that just about all of us go through. We're willing to sort of compromise our values sometimes and do things that we don't think we should do just because we want people to like us. And I think that happens with a lot of people. But at the same time, we want self-respect and acceptance. Thank you, Matthew. That was good. All right, we'll have Will. Go to Will. Will, which one would you like us to vote? Well, I know, but like Matthew, Matthew thought he was pretty good on one and he was going in the right place, but we had to tweak it a little bit for him to write it carefully. So do you want to do conflict? Do you want to do character? You want to do setting?
Environmental conflict.
Okay. Charlie Gordon overcoming the illness and death after the operation. Well, that's pretty much the same as the second conflict that we talked about with Lauren. So his desire to live and not degrade into death and nothingness. Social conflict. All right, good. Charlie Gordon wants to become smarter, and the social rules to stay how you are, don't cheat. I like this. Will, explain this to me a little bit, because I think you're on the right track here. This is good. What are you thinking of when you're thinking of this? What part of the story are you thinking of?
Like when the factory.
Yeah, I'm thinking of that too. What about the factory? What happens when he becomes intelligent? What happens to him at the factory?
He has more respect.
Actually not. Micah, help him out.
The one lady tells him that you shouldn't, like, get knowledge, you should, like, work for it.
That's right. I can't remember her name. She's a secretary or somebody working at the factory. She's the only person who kind of stands behind him and doesn't sign that petition, but at the same time, she does give him that lecture. Will and everybody else, the rest of the factory rejects him. They sign a petition to have him fired. So the society, and there's no one person really, the society there is telling him, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be cheating to be intelligent. But he wants to be intelligent, and he wants to just cheat to get there. He wants to take this experiment and become intelligent that way. But the society is telling him no. I could see that as a social conflict because his interests and goals and his actions are in conflict with what the society or what the group expects. And what Micah pushed you to, thinking about that woman and what she says, is excellent evidence if you wanted evidence pulled out in a page and you wanted to talk about it. Good, thank you. Let's clean up my desktop a little bit here. All right, Miranda. Miranda, is there one that you'd like help with? We still haven't done a personal conflict. We still haven't done any characters. What would you like us to focus on? Internal? Protagonist side, tries to motivated to become smart. Good. Antagonist side, doubts himself. Tells himself to do, ooh, I like that. That's a different way of characterizing his internal conflict. And that's a good way to do it too. So Miranda, let me help you out here with this. So on your protagonist side, let's write it as the motivation to become intelligent. Let's do that. And then on his antagonist side, sorry, I don't want to go too fast for you. On his antagonist side, let's say that his self-doubt denies that he will ever be intelligent. Actually, you know what? Everything that I just said, hold on, Miranda. Everything that I just said is pretty much how you characterized it, so I'm not sure that I'm improving your language. I think you got it right the first time. So I like where you're going, Miranda. I think that works really well. Calden, thank you. Calden, let's deal with some character issue, because we haven't done that yet. So which character issue do you want to talk about? Tyler, Landon, the three of you gentlemen were working together on this. Which one do you feel a little bit uncertain about that you might like some help with to make sure that you're going in the right direction? Yeah, let's look at characters. Okay, I'll throw it out to the rest of the class. They're talking about Charlie Gordon being a dynamic character. They're talking about Miss Kinneam being a dynamic character, Algernon being a flat character, and Joe and Frank being round characters. Can somebody pick one of those that they would like to work with? Lauren? Okay, let's work with Miss Kinnian. Dynamic because she went from helping Charlie to having strong feelings for him. So, Kylie, can you remind me, actually, Kylie, I don't think you were here last week. That's unfair for me to ask you that. Abby, can you help me, remind me what dynamic character means?
Where they change from the beginning of the story to the end.
Excellent. Change from beginning of the story to the end. What changes about them?
Their traits.
Thank you. So we need a trait change, a change from an A, what we might call an A trait to a B trait. So I'm going to change from kind to cruel. And I'll tell you what, I don't think that Miss Kinnian is a dynamic character. I think that she's a static character. I'll explain why in a moment. But what I'd like to do is say that they have listed somebody up here that is a dynamic character that does undergo a significant change, seems different at the end from how they were at the beginning. Harold.
Algernon?
I'm going to contend that Algernon's not a character. Because remember, characters must be people. And the mouse is never personified. It's never given human instinct or will, emotional depth, anything like that. Try again.
Joe.
Why Joe and Frank?
Because in the beginning they like to make fun of him, but at the end they were willing to stand.
Calden, right there in the dynamic area, I would like you to say they change from cruel to kind. It's that simple. Sammy, let's say tomorrow you're going to choose to talk about Joe and Frank and how they changed from cruel to kind. What's your evidence for cruelty?
That they make fun of him all the time.
Talk to me about an incident where they make fun of him.
Sometimes somebody will say if they look at Joey or Frank or George, he really pulled a Charlie Porter.
Excellent. Thank you, Sammy. That's perfect. And you've even got a quotation. So tomorrow when I give you a writing that requires a quotation, which I will, you can use that quotation on that page. What page is that on? 60. You could even type that in if you wanted evidence for cruelty, page 60. You probably find evidence for cruelty elsewhere too. B, give me evidence for kindness. Very good. Sticking up for him at the end. It's excellent. I think that might be on page 83, if I remember correctly. But if not, it's around there somewhere. So we're going to change that from round to dynamic. And actually, now that I look at it, Calden, Landon, Tyler, everything you wrote over there in the round section is pretty accurate. And what we just talked about, I think you just made a mistake with the concepts. Okay? Round means they're always kind and cruel at the same time. They go back and forth and back and forth. They're always the same thing. Dynamic means they're distinctly this, and then something happens, and they change to this. So I think you had the right ideas, just in the wrong section. I would eliminate Algernon. He's not a character.
But you have to add, why did you do?
Algernon as a character?
Yeah, take that out. That's what he's suggesting. Some people aren't making changes. And did you say Miss Kinnian is actually static?
I'm thinking Miss Kinnian is static because you can't really identify that she changes all that much. Somebody talk to me about Miss Kinnian. Allie, talk to me about Miss Kinnian. What's your impression of Miss Kinnian? What kind of person is she?
Well,
Just think about what she does in the story.
she likes, Charlie.
She likes Charlie. Good. And so how does she show that?
She, cares for him. Like, when he, wouldn't let her in, she'd cry.
Very good. She cries when she's separated from him. She pays his rent. She helps him personally tutoring. She says, "You're my favorite student" at the night class. There's a lot that says that she's caring, right? That she's a helpful person. So let's see. She's caring. She's helpful. She's kind. And she's always that way, right? from the beginning of the story to the end. So that makes her static. She's a static character. She never changes. Is she round or flat? Sorry? Why flat, Jessica?
Because they're all like the same trait.
I want you to listen to what Jessica just said because Jessica's right on the concept as I discussed it last week. If she's kind and caring and helpful, Jessica's right. Those are all basically the same trait. She's a flat character. She's flat and static. She's flat in that she never changes, or she only really has one set of character traits. So gentlemen and everybody else, you could enter in flat, kind, caring, helpful. And then in static, you could just say, never changes. Your original evidence was she went from helping Charlie to having strong feelings for him. I think she always had strong feelings for him. She was always helping him. She was always trying to be his friend, and that makes her kind and caring and helpful. She's always that way, so that works. Let's see, Charlie Gordon. You guys are all typing. I won't advance further. Oh, yeah. You've thrown in the doctors in there. That'd be a good character to explore, or characters to explore. Let's briefly end by talking about Charlie and what type of character he is. If Charlie experiences an internal conflict, what would we call him? What kind of character? Which kind of character would experience an internal conflict where two sides of their personalities are sort of warring with each other? Harold? Only if they change, and we haven't necessarily said that they change through the story. You're close. Lauren? Why round? There you go. Round characters demonstrate traits that conflict or contradict each other. Is Charlie a kind person? Come on, is Charlie okay? Charlie's a kind person. Amir, give me evidence that he's a kind, nice person.
He's willing to have someone's patron out of right.
Good. He seems to work pretty well with Miss Kinney, and he's nice to the doctors also. Is he ever mean? Cruel? No? Yes, he starts to become aggressive. Miranda, when he's becoming aggressive during that experiment, do you think he stops being kind? It's kind of both at the same time, isn't he? Because we're inside his head, in his journals, we still know he's a kind person. He loves Miss Kinnian. He still talks about that, but at the same time, we know that he's being aggressive and cruel toward his coworkers, toward the people at the lab. He is both. So we would throw him over here in rounds and talk about how he experiences both kindness and cruelty at the same time. And that would make him a round character. Okay, that was sort of lightning fast, and we got a lot of information down. And I was pleased to see that much of what you'd written down was going in the right direction, definitely. If you are concerned about anything that you'd like to write about tomorrow, you can talk about it during class tomorrow. In the meantime, why don't you wrap it up, log off, and return your Chromebooks when you're ready.